Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're really getting into it, looking at some sources that, honestly, push back against centuries of tradition. We're aiming to pull Confucius out of the dusty textbook, and onto the street. We're diving straight into the Analects, Chapter 1, Zhu Er, and asking a pretty fundamental question. What if the way you've been taught learning is, well, just wrong?
Yeah, that's the core of it.
Our goal here is to give you a fresh look, something practical from this classic text, to show that maybe, just maybe, Confucian thought is really about how you act, your moral conduct, your experience, not just academic stuff.
Right, not just book smarts.
And just to set the scene for how tangled this all got, our sources point to this amazing little detail from more modern times. Apparently, students used to call professors teaching the classics 3-4 professors. It's kind of dripping with contempt, isn't it?
It really is, and that contempt, it's actually key to what we're discussing. The problem wasn't the wisdom itself, you see, it was how it was taught, so rigid. For hundreds of years, especially from the Song dynasty on, Confucius got institutionalized, turned into this mandatory dogma. So yeah, we need to peel back those layers, those required annotations like the ones from Zhu Xi. We want to find the original practical idea of learning Zhu Wen that's kind of buried under all that.
Okay, let's start with maybe the first big split, this huge historical moment, the language divide. Early 20th century, the May 4th movement pushing for Baihe Wen, the vernacular language. Why did they think abandoning classical Chinese, Guwen, was so vital for progress?
Well, the motivation seemed solid at the time. They wanted to soak up new global knowledge fast, and crucially, align the written word with how people actually spoke. Make literacy easier for everyone. It felt like the only path forward, to catch up globally.
But hang on, wasn't the classical system Guwen, wasn't it inherently elitist? Didn't it take years of study? If the goal was empowering more people, maybe breaking from the past was necessary.
That's exactly the tension, yes. Baihe Wen definitely helped modernize the language, no question. But the sources we're looking at argue there was this massive unintended side effect. It essentially severed the culture. All that accumulated knowledge, history, philosophy stored in Guwen. Suddenly, new generations couldn't easily access it. They couldn't read their own heritage.
Severed the culture. That's a strong way to put it.
It is. And if you look at how it worked, it's really quite unique to Chinese. Think about English or German. Texts from even 100 years ago can be tough for an average person today. Language drifts. But the Chinese system deliberately separated the written character wen from the spoken word you. Why? Because they knew speech changes constantly, like every generation or so. This character system let ideas written down stay readable across thousands of years. So ditching Guwen, well, kind of locked the door of their own library.
Wow, okay. So the intention, modernization, was understandable, even right for the goal of progress.
Yeah, arguably.
But the way it was done created this huge gap, culturally, academically.
Yeah.
Which brings us right back to the problem you mentioned earlier. Misinterpretations, fueled by these mandatory annotations.
Exactly. Zhu Xi's interpretations became the standard for the imperial exams for something like 600 years. So scholars weren't really reading Confucius anymore. They were reading Zhu Xi's version of Confucius. It put serious limits on how people could think about these ideas.
Right. Let's zoom in on that famous first line of the Analects, 1.1. To learn and timely practice it, is this not joy? You mentioned students hating it. Our sources suggest it caused more suffering than joy for kids forced to memorize it. Why?
Because the whole meaning of Zhu Wen, of learning, got twisted. It became about reciting literature, memorizing facts. But the original sense, the sources argue, it's about moral growth. It's about figuring out how to be a good person, how to do things the right way. It's practical, more like a guide to living than a school subject.
Okay, let's break down that first phrase then. Su, shi, zi. You're saying the key words are shi, meaning timely, and shi, meaning practice or experience.
Exactly. The focus is right there.
What does that tell us about learning? It's not just a one-off thing.
Not at all. It tells us learning is experiential. It's ongoing. It doesn't primarily happen in a classroom with books. It comes from constantly looking at your life, your actions, and reflecting. You learn through doing, and you adjust as you go. In the moment, timely.
And the joy,
the
you or shu or part.
Also internal. It's not like, woohoo, party, happiness. It's quieter. It's that knowing smile, that little aha moment inside the Huijin de Wei Zhao when some principle you read about suddenly clicks because you just lived it. You see it in action.
That's a really different feel, that aha moment. I like that. It makes learning sound much more personal. Let's explore that contrast, book learning versus lived experience, using this idea of personal development. The sources bring up two kinds of people, right? borrowed from Taoism, Zen Ren and the Jia Ren.
Right. So true learning, this moral achievement we're talking about, is aiming for the Zhenren, the true person. Someone authentic, realized, who has reached a kind of moral peak. And that's contrasted with the Jiren, the false person. Someone who might have all the right credentials, look the part, but lacks that solid moral core. Learning, then, is really a path towards becoming genuine, authentic.
So everyday morality isn't just rules, it's part of this quest for authenticity.
That's interesting. And does this connect to the next line? Yu pengzi yuan feng lai. Usually translated as something simple like, isn't it great when friends visit?
Yeah, that translation is way too simplistic. It misses the real depth. The friend, Peng, isn't just anybody. It's a Ziji, a real confidant, a soulmate, someone who truly gets you. Very rare. And the distance, Yuan, isn't necessarily physical miles. It can be spiritual distance or even time.
Time, how so? Confucius is basically telling his followers, look, don't chase fame or validation from the crowd. That's cheap. Focus on your principles. Eventually, the right people, your Peng, those few who genuinely understand you, they'll connect with you, even if it takes centuries, like it did for Confucius himself. He wasn't widely recognized until long after his death.
Ah, okay, so it's about the quiet satisfaction of deep connection with a few who understand, not needing applause from everyone.
Exactly. It's internal validation, not external.
That completely changes the feel of it, shifts focus from public status to inner work and genuine relationships. Okay, let's pivot to the foundation of that inner work. Xiaodi, filial piety and fraternal love. Now, this became a huge target later on, didn't it? One of the main crimes used to attack Confucianism during modernization efforts.
It absolutely did. It got painted as blind obedience, feudalistic.
But if the original idea was reciprocal love, like you suggested, how did it get so twisted into this harsh one-way street of obligation by later scholars? That seems like a major distortion.
Yeah. It was distorted by stripping out the reciprocity. Later interpretations imposed these incredibly strict, unforgiving rules, like that saying, heaven has no unrighteous parents. The source material is very clear. That's not what Confucius taught. The original spirit of Shao, filial piety, it's about mutual love and emotional connection. It's necessary.
How so necessary?
Think about it. A father shows kindness, Shay, and a son returns that with Shao. It's what makes us human, culturally speaking. Animals raise their young, and then they usually part ways for good. Humans maintain that parent-child bond through Shao. It's not about blind obedience. It's this essential emotional feedback loop that defines our social fabric.
And Dai, fraternal love, that's about extending that outward.
Precisely. Dai starts with siblings, but it broadens out to friends, and then eventually to society as a whole. That's Fanai Zhang. And what's really unique in Chinese thought is putting Peng Yu, friendship, right there as one of the 5 cardinal relationships.
Alongside ruler-subject, parent-child.
Exactly. It acknowledges that we have deep emotional needs that family and the state alone just can't meet. Friendship is recognized as fundamentally important for a person in society.
That also makes sense of that idea from the great learning, Kijia, harmonizing the family.
Yes. And back then, family wasn't the small nuclear unit we think of today. It was the Dejia Zu, the large extended clan. So Kijia was essentially early social theory. Managing that extended family was managing the basic unit of society. It was the ground floor of social development.
Okay, so learning is moral action. It's about authenticity, built on these core relationships. How did Confucius suggest putting this into practice?
Yeah.
Day by day. Let's look at Zhengzi's approach. Simple, right? Just 3 points he checked himself on daily. San Sheng Wu Shan.
Remarkably simple and very practical. It shows this wasn't some high-flown philosophy disconnected from life. His 3 checks were, 1, Zhang, was I loyal, diligent? Did I really do my best in my duties or work for others? Integrity in action.
Okay.
2, Zhang, was I trustworthy? Did I keep my word with my friends? And 3, Chuanbu Shi Hu, did I actually practice the principles I was taught? Or was it just talk? Am I walking the walk?
Practicing what you preach.
Okay.
I want to circle back to that first one, Zhang. It comes to being another tricky quote. A noble person who isn't respected lacks seriousness. Bu Zhang Ziruwei. If they learn, their learning is unstable. Su Zibugu. Zhang here is often translated as seriousness or even gravity, making the person sound stiff. But there's a reinterpretation.
Yes, a much more practical one. Instead of stiffness, think of Zhang here as self-respect. Or maybe self-confidence, integrity in oneself. Without that core self-respect, that belief in your own worth and efforts, any knowledge you gain is unstable, buku. It's shaky. You can't use it effectively.
Ah, so learning needs to be grounded in self-worth to actually stick and be useful.
Exactly. It has to be anchored within you first.
And building on that self-respect, that leads us to maybe the most controversial line in the whole chapter, Wu Yu Buruchi Z. The traditional translation is pretty awful. Don't make friends with people inferior to yourself sounds incredibly snobbish.
Terribly snobbish. And yeah, that reading has done a lot of damage, making Confucianism seem elitist. But based on the language, the context, the better and likely correct interpretation is basically the opposite.
The opposite.
Yes, do not consider any friend or any person, really, as inferior to yourself. Assume everyone has value. Respect everyone. Recognize that every single person has strengths you might lack.
Wow. Okay, that completely flips it. If you go into every interaction thinking, this person has something valuable I don't, it forces humility.
It forces you to drop the ego, yes.
Yeah.
And what happens then?
Well, you start seeing your own gaps, I guess.
Precisely. By actively looking for and respecting others' strengths, wu yu bugi ru ji zi, you can't help but become aware of your own shortcomings in comparison. That insight is immediate.
And that insight naturally leads to
Action,
Yeah.
which is the very next line. Guoze wu dan gai. If you find a fault in yourself, don't be afraid to correct it. Don't hesitate.
So respect others, see your flaws, bravely fix them.
That's the cycle. This continuous, courageous self-correction is the mark of real practice learning. It's not about being perfect initially. It's about the willingness to constantly improve.
That makes so much more sense. It grounds learning in humility and being aware of others.
Yeah.
Okay, final big concept. Moving from the personal to the social. Lie rights. Propriety. Yuzi says, in using rights, harmony, he is most valuable. What does lei mean practically for society?
Yeah, we get tangled up thinking lie is just fussy etiquette, like which fork to use. Modern manners are often just a confusing mashup anyway. Lie was much bigger. Think of it as a philosophical system. It was the method for adjusting and balancing all the natural conflicts and imbalances that pop up in human relationships and in society. And harmony, was the ultimate goal of that regulation.
So not just manners, but like the rules of engagement for society.
Kind of like the operating system for a harmonious society, yeah. Its job is managing friction, balancing individual needs and desires with the needs of the community. It's fundamentally about conflict resolution on a societal scale.
An operating system. I like that. So Li was basically the ancient Chinese framework for governance, like a constitutional philosophy.
That's a good way to think about it. It laid out the principles for how things should run. You see it in lines like Dokinan, Sheng, Ziguao, how to lead a large state, be diligent, trustworthy, save resources, love the people, use their labor at the right times. These are principles of Li applied to governing.
It all flows from this idea of rights as the structure for harmony. Okay, so bringing it all together, what's the final takeaway? What's the ultimate point of all this learning, according to this first chapter?
Well, it loops right back around. The entire chapter, Suer, kind of culminates in its very last sentence, and it revisits that theme of recognition we talked about earlier. The final piece of advice, the real goal for the learner is this. Do not worry that other people do not know you. Worry that you do not know other people.
Bu Huan Renzi Bujizi, Huan Buji Renye.
That lands powerfully after everything else.
Doesn't it?
It completely flips the script. True learning isn't about wanting recognition. Why doesn't anyone see how great I am? Right, that whole ego trap.
Instead, the focus shifts totally outward. Do I actually understand the people around me? Do I understand the world?
Exactly. It promotes a really healthy mindset. Instead of blaming fate or other people if things aren't going your way, the authentic learner constantly looks inward. What do I need to understand better? How can I improve my understanding of others? That's the focus. Constant self-reflection aimed at better understanding the world.
So we've peeled back, hopefully, quite a few layers of misinterpretation of dogma.
Hopefully.
The Analects, when you strip away that rigid scholastic filter, seems to be this really pragmatic guide. It's about cultivating yourself, interacting well, focusing on your actions, your conduct, way more than just collecting credentials.
Conduct over credentials. That sums it up nicely.
This deep dive really suggests that true learning, Su Wen, is ultimately this disciplined, lifelong practice of trying to be that Zen Ren, that authentic person.
Yeah.
And your textbook, it's your own life experience.
Beautifully put. And that leaves us with a final thought, maybe a challenge for you listening right now. We talked about how one scholar's interpretations, Zhu Xi's, effectively put limits on intellectual life for 600 years. So the question is, What are the dominant annotations today? What modern assumptions, political, cultural, academic, whatever, might be restricting your ability to see the original truth, the practical value in the knowledge you encounter?
What modern dogma is getting in the way of your own Huixin Dui Xiao, that quiet smile of real understanding?
Mm, something to think about.
Indeed. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep reflecting, keep learning, and keep looking for that true person within.